Indie horror games are something I talk about quite a lot on this channel. It's something I enjoy talking about, but not something I enjoy, well, playing. Most of them just kinda suck. Indie horror games are very common nowadays, so it's only a matter of time before some of them slip through the cracks of the public conscious. It's a fate bestowed upon many indie horror games, especially those released during the great indie horror game renaissance of the early 2010s with the release of Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, many may know that Five Nights at Freddy's is a point-and-click horror game. However, it was around this time where a bunch of point-and-click horror games, even before FNAF came out, started popping up. Even before the release of FNAF, the point-and-click genre of horror games was fairly popular, with one of the earliest examples being I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, a personal favorite of mine. This trend of horror games actually continues for a very long time, from the 90s to the early 2020s. There are many popular point-and-click horror games. Most of you already may know about games like Don't Escape, Franbo, Clock Tower, and as I already mentioned, the most popular of which, Five Nights at Freddy's.
This attraction is great!
But because of how easy this genre of gaming is to make, a lot of point-and-click horror games tend to be forgotten, only slightly remembered through playthroughs by bigger horror-adjacent YouTubers, and one of the most interesting but also forgotten point-and-click indie horror game series that fit that description pretty well is the series Bad Dream by Desert Fox. If you know about this game in any capacity, you probably know it from Markiplier's playthrough back in 2015. Bad Dream, the series, is best known for its cruelly drawn art style, while also having a very creepy aesthetic. Now, this series by all means is not very popular. The most exposure it's ever gotten is from Markiplier, which is all the way back in 2015. So if that's the case, why am I talking about it? Well, it's simple. Out of all the indie horror games that Mark played back when I used to watch him, this one by far stuck out the most, besides Five Nights at Freddy's, but shut the fuck up. Usually when things stand out to me from my past, it's never clear to me why. But this is an exception to that. I know exactly why this series has stood out to me. One word. Atmosphere. Oh yeah, that word is back! Now, I've spattled on about how atmosphere can heavily impact the game and its ability to linger in one's mind back in the Chili's art video. I still think atmosphere is one of the most important things for a game to have, but more specifically, horror games. A good atmosphere leaves the player with a good experience, but just how good of an atmosphere does the Bad Dream series actually have? Well, strap in. We're about to find out. But before we begin, go down and hit that like and subscribe button. It helps me out a lot more than you think. It's free and only takes 5 seconds to do. And share this video with everyone and anyone can. My goal is to eventually hit 100k, so if you want to be part of that, you know what to do. With that all being said, sit back, relax, grab a snack, turn those lights off as we take a deep dive into the forgotten indie horror game series.
Say to you are watching the Expert Actor Draft.
Currently, there are 8 installments of the Bad Dream series. However, we're only going to be looking at the first 5, as they're the most popular, and I've never played the other ones, so yeah. Normally, the way these types of videos would work is me taking a look at each game one by one, and at the end giving my final thoughts on the entire series. However, because each game in the series is only about like 5 minutes, I decided I'm going to change it up slightly. I'm still going to be talking about each of the games individually, just in a different manner. What I mean by that is I'm not going to be transitioning between each game. I'll just be bouncing around from game to game until I get my point across. Now, that might be a little messy, but to be honest, this is the only real way I can cover it without this video being like 10 minutes long. You got all that? Good. Let's begin. The first game released in the Bad Dream series is Butcher. Right off the bat, you'll definitely notice that the Bad Dream series has a very unique art style, and I really like this art style. It's rough, harsh, grisly, grim, morbid, and macabre. It's definitely not stylized. Looking at the art itself, you can notice things like very noticeable sketch lines and very bare bones coloring, but that's what makes it so unique. I really like sketch art, especially when it's utilized in a horror setting. A lot of scenes look like they're unfinished, which adds to the unsettling atmosphere. While each of these games are extremely short, each one of them has a lasting impact, and a lot of that has to do with the atmosphere. Another big thing that has to do with it is the disturbing imagery. The Bad Dream series is very grim. While simple on the surface, all of them explore very dark concepts. Each entry of the Bad Dream series is very simple, being a point-and-click horror game. All you do is explore a rather large area collecting things, as most point-and-clicks are. While most point-and-click games typically include puzzles, the Bad Dream series doesn't really have puzzles. While this may may make the gameplay rather stale, the Bad Dream series isn't really about the gameplay, it's about the atmosphere. Each one of the games in the Bad Dream series has a thick, dreadful atmosphere. However, each entry has its own unique atmosphere. So let's start with the first game released in the Bad Dream series, Bad Dream Butcher. Butcher's premise is very simple. Your end goal is to make soup. Throughout the game, you'll collect the ingredients you need to make said soup. However, it's not as easy as you may think. During the game, you'll encounter a few obstacles that, for a lack of better terms, mutilate your hand, either from a pig creature or random children cutting your fingers off. And as the game progresses, your cursor reflects your new appearance. Every time you lose a finger, the cursor also loses a finger. Another thing you may have noticed is every time you lose a finger, the screen becomes progressively more bloody, like it's the fucking intro card. Another interesting thing I noticed that I didn't mention prior is all the negative speech on each screen. While at first it may seem like a minimalistic approach to correspond with the simplistic art style, in my opinion it can be interpolated as something darker. Like the series' name implies, the Bad Dream series is a bunch of games that take place in, well, a dream. And a lot of dreams have a lot of details that are missing or nonsensical. You only really focus on what's important and what's going on. Overall, it still might be a stylistic choice, but I think it's pretty neat. Another thing the Bad Dream series likes to do is have alternate endings. During each game, there are typically two endings. With Bad Dream Butcher, at the end of the game, you typically lose all your fingers. However, there's a way to beat the game without losing a single finger. Each problem has alternate methods to solve it. It really adds on to the idea of lucid dreaming the series likes to go for, where you get some sort of control over what happens. It's very unique. The gameplay might be simple, but the ideas the game tries to get across is not. The subject matter that the Bad Dream series tackles is very dark. While each game in the series is very short, it's less of the gameplay that sticks with you and more of the experience. It's very much one of those games that make you think, mostly due to the absolute unpredictability. The answer to each problem is not as obvious as it always may seem. In order to get to the lower area of this building, you have to cut someone down from a noose so they break the floor, allowing you to enter the room. In this room contains a shovel and wire. The shovel is used to dig up a skull, and within the skull lies a key. The game very much fits the idea of randomness that happens when you're dreaming. At the end of the game, you make soup, and the soup contains your fingers that you cut off, and a dead fish. Like I mentioned previously, there is a way you can beat the game without losing any fingers, and if you complete the game without losing any, well, you just get dead fish soup, and that's Bad Dream Butcher. Bad Dream Graveyard follows roughly the same premise of wandering around a dreamscape while doing disturbing acts in order to complete the game. That's not something I really mentioned during Bad Dream Butcher, but a lot of problems are solved by doing rather dark things. A great example of this is in Bad Dream Graveyard. Your end goal is to sew on a teddy bear's head to a dead child. Now, you may expect me to make a Five Nights at Freddy's joke, but Bad Dream Graveyard actually came out almost a full year before. So who did the dead child trope first, huh? It's still not a good trope to have.
I'm addicted to guns!
In my opinion, Bad Dream Graveyard is far darker than Butcher was. While Butcher had plenty of gore for its scares and events, Graveyard ups it quite drastically. Another thing I failed to mention was that for each of these games, they all have unique soundtracks for their ambience. Most of them are legitimately unnerving and serve their purpose well. Throughout the game, as you progress, like Bad Dream Butcher, you start losing things. Only this time, as the game progresses, you lose parts of your teddy bear. Like I already mentioned, at the end, you use it to sew onto the child's body. Graveyard also continues the trend of disturbing and bizarre sequences. One of the weirdest things about this game is the collection of flies you have to get. A big chunk of solving the answers net you a fly that you have to put in this chicken coop. Another weird thing that these games have in common is the consistent appearance of the Jack-in-the-Box, which every game in the series has at least one. For the most part, they act as like little jump scares that at the end give you an item that is required, but some of them just exist. However, this time, the Jack-in-the-Box actually gives you a spring. The spring is needed in order to get the wooden bird head. The wooden bird head is used to give to the Scarecrow, which also needs knife and blood covering it. And once you complete that, the Scarecrow goes off and just kills everyone, and after the Scarecrow kills everything, the music takes a drastic turn, becoming far more ominous. The dead animals on the floor give you the last two flies you need in order to get sticky goo. The sticky goo is needed in order to attach the teddy bear's head to the dead child, and that was Graveyard. You'll definitely notice that these games don't really make much sense, and that's the point. Once again, it's a game about dreams. Hospital, without a doubt, is the most popular, and for good reason. Bad Dream Hospital is just so bizarre compared to the other ones, which is impressive given the track record of the other games. The gore is once again upped considerably, and also somehow being even more bizarre. I'll say it right now, this is the goriest and most bizarre entry in the Bad Dream series, but also my favorite entry and probably has the most content. Your end goal this time around is to color this drawing by any means necessary, which also means using things that wouldn't typically be used when coloring, like blood, or throw up, or shit. Yeah, just smear some shit on it, why not? However, once again, like always, it has two endings. The second ending has you collecting a set of crayons so you can color the paper without, once again, smearing shit on it. However, this ending actually ends with you dying for doing things normally, which is not what the doctor likes, as the intended method of doing it has the doctor writing, "I like your madness," right above the drawing. The puzzles this time around is a little more complex than usual, having more than one step. Most of the time it's due to the fact that most puzzles don't directly tell you where to go or what to do. You just kinda have to guess or make decisions that don't usually make sense. A good example of a puzzle that you have to use your smarts for is getting the thermostat. In order to get past the nurse, you have to give her the thermostat. However, in order for her to accept it, it has to be hard enough. So what do? You go over to the radiator and put it on it so it heats up, allowing you to give it to the nurse. The nurse then sews up this guy and then gives you access to the crayons, but once again the crayons kill you, so maybe don't use them. Now, I don't know if all the Bad Dream games are connected or not, but as each game passes on, the dreamlike state becomes more apparent with more bizarre and creepy things happening. While it definitely peaked at Hospital, the next game also feels more dreamlike than the previous two. Something I noticed about these games is that some of them tackle real life fears like dying or going to the hospital, and I think the last game tackles the most real, not only fear, but reality. However, we have to get through one more game before we cover the last game. Cyclops is the most forgettable game in the Bad Dream series, and is probably my least favorite. Your end goal for this game is to fend off the Cyclops by taking its eye out. Cyclops takes place in a more medieval town. This is what I was referring to when I was talking about it being more dreamlike than the other games. While Butcher also takes place in a similar area, Cyclops goes deep with the fantasy idea. Cyclops is also the least interesting game and doesn't really follow the same premise as the others, with less gore and disturbing imagery. It still has somewhat disturbing events that happen randomly. It's not like Hospital or Graveyard where that was a big chunk of the game. The disturbing shit happens far and few between. This is shown even more with the ending. Comparing it to the others, it's very tame. The ending itself just has you stabbing the Cyclops' eye out, and throughout the game in the background you can notice that the Cyclops, which is not actually a Cyclops, you just make it into a Cyclops, gets ever so closer. There's a slight alternate ending where you collect a bunch of shit, but it still connects to the ending where you stab the guy's eye out. The puzzles are also kind of lackluster compared to Hospital. While there are still a few creative puzzles throughout, none of them really leave an impact like some of the other ones in the other games, which harpens back to what I was saying, that it's the most forgettable entry in an already forgotten indie horror game series. The creator of the Bad Dream series, Desert Fox, also made a few other games that weren't connected to the Bad Dream series, but still have the same art style as Bad Dream, and in my opinion, this game fits in with those better. Cyclops was definitely a hiccup when it came to the Bad Dream series, however the last entry, and probably the best one, makes up for it, and not in the way you may expect. The final entry of the classic Bad Dream series, excluding Coma because it's far more deep than the other games, is Memory. While the other games in the Bad Dream series have had a dark and disturbing take, Bad Dream Memories is more somber than disturbing, tackling the idea of death and letting go. Memories introduces a new gimmick of sorts, with things and drawings appearing in real life, or real dreams, I don't know. A big chunk of what you have to do is take items and put them in drawings so they become real, or dreams? Again, I don't know. Now, unlike the other Bad Dream games, I believe Bad Dream Memory only has one ending, which is the most infamous part about this game. But before we get there, let me talk a little bit about the game itself. Out of all of the Bad Dream games, this game is the least dreamlike, with more of the page being taken up instead of having negative space like the other ones did, which might be symbolic of the fact that the topics and memories are far more real than the ones in any of the other games. While Memories still continue some of the trends in the other games, like having bizarre and disturbing events randomly happening, it's far more tame and connected to reality than the other ones were. It's less of a dream and more like a memory, hence the title. While Hospital is my favorite, I think Memories is the most well done out of the series, including the newer entries like Coma and Fever. You can definitely feel the somberness of Memories, especially with the soundtrack. Both the normal ambience and the song that plays with the drawings are very telling, specifically the song with the drawings. This game has the most story of any of the Bad Dream games, and unlike most indie horror games, the story in Memories is just straight up shown to us. Holy shit. As I already mentioned, Memories is about death and letting go. You're shown through the drawings that you find around the place that this person's dog has passed away. And as we get more drawings, we can also see that the parents also passed away. As the drawings progress, we see how the child gets less happy as he grows. However, we also see in each drawing that death is always looming until eventually taking the parents. As one last attempt to stop death, the child then sets up a trap for death when he comes out of the outhouse. Eventually, Death springs the trap and it cuts his dick off. Eventually, Death springs the trap and it cuts his dick off. I don't know, man, that's what it looks like. Upon going back into the house, there's now a new drawing. Only this time, there's a note from Death himself.
You can't do anything to stop me. I'm sorry.
Signed, Death. And that was the end of Memories. This game by far was the best produced game in the Bad Dream series, not only having the most impactful ending, but also being the most memorable due to said ending, especially paired with the soundtrack that plays over it. And that was the Bad Dream series. Haha! Surprise entry! We actually have one more Bad Dream game to go over, and that's Bridge. Bridge is the final game released in the classic era of the Bad Dream series, with it originally being the be-all to end-all. Bridge wrapped up the original 5 into one big story. However, at the end of Bridge, there's a teaser for the next game being Coma. While Bridges is the final of the original 6, it doesn't mean it's the end of the actual story, as Bridge is one part in the overarching story that continued with Coma and Fever. However, we're not going to be talking about those two this time because, well, they're not really that interesting and they don't really fit with the original 6. While they're probably higher quality, they differ far too much for me to even consider. With that all being said, we're ending this video off with the 6th and final entry of the original Bad Dream series. Bridge. Being the last entry in the classic era, Bridge definitely has the most content. Bad Dream Bridge has a bunch of callbacks to the original 5 and even ending up in the hospital from, well, Hospital. I've mentioned previously how most of the Bad Dream games are slightly connected, however Bridge connects them all together, hence why it's called Bridge. Bridge adds all the games together. All the drawings you see throughout the games are drawn by the same person, and as each game passes on, we see less color in the drawings, and at the end of Memories, we see absolutely no color, but blue to indicate tears. But beyond the drawings, there are far more than just a few recurring things that happen in the Bad Dream series, one of the most prevalent things being the Jack-in-the-Box I was talking about. The game also returns to the more minimalistic approach that the other games had before Memories, and it's done exceptionally well as it's even more airy than it was beforehand. However, I don't really like Bridge. It's a fine enough game, but compared to the other 5 excluding Cyclops, it's not really as quality as the others were, which might have to do with the fact that it's a part of a bigger game, which, to be fair, could just be me, as I've never seen anything to do with Bad Dream, Coma, or Fever. By the time those games came out, I kinda lost interest in the series. Also, a huge chunk of the game has you revisiting the hospital, except expanded. It still looks similar to the hospital in Bad Dream Hospital, however, I wish Bridge connected the games even more and had throwbacks to the other areas from the other games. While the puzzles are fine, they're nothing groundbreaking like usual. While it's a fine enough game and it's still better than Cyclops, I felt a little disappointed by it given the fact that it was the final game in the original 6. However, That was Bad Dream Bridge. I've said in the past that I don't usually let nostalgia blind me, and that still holds up for the Bad Dream series. However, the Bad Dream series is still really good, and I see why it stuck with me all these years later. While a few of the entries were pretty bland and boring, I still think the series as a whole had lots of potential that most games lived up to. Now, I haven't mentioned this up until now, but Desert Fox actually made a few more Bad Dream games beyond Coma and Fever, with Full Moon and Purgatory. Bad Dream Purgatory is the most recent, being released in 2023. However, on Desert Fox's Steam page, he actually has another Bad Dream game yet to be announced called Bad Dream Afterlife, and from the screenshots I've seen on the Steam page, it looks very promising. The Bad Dream series as a whole had a pretty big impact on my childhood beyond just a series I watched by Markiplier. It in some ways influenced my interest. While it's definitely been a while since I've played or seen the Bad Dream series, I still think it's a really good series of short little horror games that you definitely should go out of your way to play, and while you're at it, go support the creator as well. If you know about any forgotten indie horror games that you saw when you were little, leave a few of them in the comments. I'm interested in what indie horror games that I might have missed or forgotten about. And I hope this video serves as a catalyst to open the floodgates for other creators to talk about other forgotten indie horror games, because let me tell you, this was far from the last time we're going to be talking about this subject. However, that was the forgotten indie horror game series, Bad Dream. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.